Braintree Dems welcomes Shannon Liss-Riordan.
Right, thank you. Thanks, Kathy. Thank you, Braintree Dems, for having me tonight. I am Shannon Liss-Riordan. I am running to be your next Attorney General. I'm really excited about this race. We've been getting so much momentum. For those of you who haven't seen me before, I know I've spoke with you before, but I want to just fill you in a little bit more about my background and why it is that I am running to be your next AG. I have spent my entire career taking on the biggest challenges and delivering big results for regular people. I have spent my career using the law as a tool to improve people's lives. For my entire 23 years as a lawyer, I have been representing working people. I've made national headlines, leading teams of lawyers, taking on some of the largest corporations in America. And time and again, we have beaten the odds, have won against corporations like Starbucks, FedEx, Uber, Amazon, IBM, my alma mater, Harvard University, which I have proudly sued at least 4 times. I have represented all types of working people: waitresses, janitors, construction workers, firefighters, Uber drivers, strippers, and helped them recover hundreds of millions of dollars that corporate America stole from them. This work has changed industries across Massachusetts and throughout the country. And I'm proud to have spent my career fighting for the people against the powerful and winning, which is exactly what I plan to do for you as your next Attorney General. I know that the people of Massachusetts can use some wins right now. Income inequality is at an all-time high. Corporate bad actors are taking advantage of workers, consumers, and our planet. Unions and the right to organize are under attack. Parents are having to choose between childcare and putting food on the table. And the United States Supreme Court is on the verge of taking away nearly 50 years of reproductive freedom. The people of Massachusetts can use a champion. I know how to use our legal system to make progress on some of the toughest issues facing us, from fighting systemic race discrimination, to standing up for gender equality, to protecting the dignity of work. My work has changed industries, and I want to give you a couple examples. I've probably been most known over the last several years for the work I've been doing on behalf of gig workers, drivers for companies like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Grubhub. It is the work that I have been doing for 10 years, fighting to get them employment rights, that has started a national conversation on the importance of these workers having those rights under our laws. And it's led to what you're going to be hearing a lot about this year, if you haven't already, a ballot initiative that the gig economy is trying to put on our ballot to buy themselves a carve out from all of our employment laws. And I'm a proud co-founder of the coalition that is fighting that. So I'm happy to talk to you more about that if anyone has any questions. But I want to talk to you now a little bit more, going back earlier in my career, of another industry that I took on and won. And that's the service industry in Massachusetts. Early in my legal career, I started getting calls from wait staff employees who were complaining to me that their managers were taking their tips. Now, these were hardworking people who put food on the table. They paid the rent based on the generosity of the public that they served, but their managers were reaching into their pockets and taking away their hard-earned tips in order to defray their own expenses and pad their bottom line. I knew that was wrong, so I agreed to take on these cases. I found this old law that had been on the books in Massachusetts since 1952, but no one really paid any attention to it. It had never really been cited or used, but I looked at it and I thought that law meant that tips are for working people. So I started taking on these cases, and before I knew it, I was getting called by wait staff all across Massachusetts. Pretty soon I had sued pretty much the entire hotel industry, fancy restaurant chains. So anyway, that first case I took on all those years ago, courts had never seen anything quite like this case. I lost that first case. But I didn't let that stop me. I kept going because I knew we were right. And so the next case, I lost that one too. But I still didn't let that stop me. I kept fighting. And then the next case I won. and the next case I won, and the next case, and the next case, and the next case after that. And pretty soon that string of cases had changed the service industry across Massachusetts. And my work in this area then expanded nationwide. And now there is not a hotel or a restaurant or an airline or a gig economy company that thinks that they can steal workers' tips, because they know that if they try, I will come after them. So this is just an example of the kind of work I've been doing for more than 20 years. I like to say I don't just take on cases. I don't just take on companies. I take on industries. I take on principles. And as I'm traveling around Massachusetts, talking to folks about my campaign, I'm asking everyone to consider this as a job interview. As you are deciding who you want to be the next lawyer for the people of Massachusetts, I ask that you consider my background, my skills, my experience, my passion, and my unparalleled record in delivering meaningful change as you're choosing the next lawyer for the people of Massachusetts. I am the only candidate in this race who is an actual practicing lawyer. I am the only candidate who has managed a law firm. I'm the only candidate who has won the jury trials, who has won the appeals, that has helped shape our laws to better and more fairly serve the people. I have been an activist lawyer throughout my career, and I hearken that back to my early days as a women's rights organizer and activist, which I learned right out of college. My first job was working for the legendary Bella Abzug.
Ah,
Learned so much from her. She said, she just had these ideas. She went out there and did it, and everyone rallied around it, and we got things done. I am really proud in this race to have received the endorsements of nearly 40 labor unions across Massachusetts, representing well more than 100,000 working people. I humbly ask for your support in this race. For those of you who are going to the convention in June, please vote for me to make sure that I'm on the ballot. I am the most qualified candidate to take over the role of Attorney General, to step into the shoes of and expand on the great work of Maura Healey. And I need to get on the ballot in order to present myself to the voters of Massachusetts. So I ask for your support. I'm excited to hear your questions tonight, because I really want to know what's on your mind. What would you like to see from the next Attorney General of Massachusetts? Thank you so much for having me tonight, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you. So if you could raise your hand if you have a question, and then Andy, you could call on people. But before we do it, I have a follow-up from our previous speaker, who was talking about Safe Communities Act and the Work and Family Mobility Act about driver's license for immigrants. Charlie Baker has said he is opposed to that because we have automatic voter registration, and then if we allow undocumented immigrants to get their driver's license, then they would be automatically registered to vote. What do you have to say to Charlie Baker?
Well, unfortunately, I think that is a misguided position from our governor. This has been a long battle, and it is very exciting to see it move forward and hopefully move forward to success. That immigrants should have driver's licenses. It's just been, it doesn't make sense to stop them from being able to get to work, to stop them from being able to, have their cars registered. So it's a matter of safety. It's just a matter of fairness. That just sounds to me like a total excuse not to allow them that privilege. So I'm sure there is a way that can be figured out to ensure that isn't going to be a roadblock to them getting driver's licenses. That just seems very short-sighted and convenient, very convenient for him to use that as an excuse not to support this important law.
Thank you. Anne, do you have your hand up?
I do. Let's see. Shannon, I'm glad that you were able to join us tonight. Hang on, I'll lower my hand. So I think it's very clear that you are on all the right sides of the worker issues. I guess what I'd be curious about, because when I think about the AG's office and the role, I think of it as kind of the state's attorney, right? So in addition to worker rights and worker concerns, and there are clearly a bounty of those, and you have enumerated your positions on those very nicely. Maybe concerns too strong. I'm wondering what some of your positions are, for example, about all the big issues like climatological issues, or obviously like the, fracks, or I mean, just pick almost anything.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm talking a lot about the work I've been doing over the last 2 decades, taking on corporations. I've done it from the labor arena, but this work has prepared me to take on corporations and powerful interests in all of the areas that the AG's office covers. As I said, I'm the only practicing lawyer who has actually done work on the ground and knows how the legal system works from that perspective. So let me just talk for a minute about climate change. I will be the leading attorney general in the country fighting climate change. And I have called upon the others in this race to engage in a debate to discuss our specific ideas and plans and priorities for how we're going to address climate change. Number one is that the legislature has now put forth a roadmap that, as I was just explaining to you with my tips story, laws don't enforce themselves. It's the first step to get the laws on the books, but you need to have a strong attorney general who knows how to use the power of the law to make sure that corporate actors comply and that our laws are actually put to use. So I plan as attorney general to set up a fund going to go after corporations who are violating our environmental rules and regulations and take the penalties and put them in a fund to fund clean energy and environmental justice projects. I am going to put to work all of the tools and experience that I have litigating and overseeing teams of lawyers to enforce our laws in the worker arena, and use that to ensure that consumers have the protection that they deserve under our Consumer Protection Act. The Attorney General's office is a place where people can go to get their issues taken care of. If there are corporations who are deceiving us, insurance companies who are taking advantage of consumers, you've got debt collectors who are harassing students. You have bad actors out there who are deceiving seniors. I mean, those are the kinds of issues that the Attorney General's office takes on. I want to make sure that people can go to the AG's office and get some relief. And in the wage enforcement area, there is a lot more that I think can be done to make sure that people get money back in their pockets right away when they are stolen from by their employers. I plan to set up a fund so that people can come and make claims. If their employer hasn't paid them properly, they should get paid. They should be able to get their money right away. They can't wait for the months or sometimes years that it often takes to get these complaints resolved. And then as Attorney General, I would go after these corporations to make them pay the penalties that would fund this initiative. So I've got a lot more out there. I'm happy to hear your questions about any particular areas, but I do believe that I am the most qualified candidate for this role to take on all of the responsibilities that the Attorney General's office has.
Thank you.
Kathy, I just wanted to ask a quick add-on, a real quick follow-up. So Shannon, can you tell us on an issues basis or a non-worker basis, what are your top 3 concerns if you win and you take office tomorrow? Take away all the worker stuff you've spoken about because you speak well about that. But if you could pick 3 top priorities that you want to see either protected or enacted in the state, what do you think the 3 most pressing legal matters are for the state?
I would say addressing climate change, protecting consumers, and criminal justice reform. There is a lot that needs to be done to ensure that we are providing resources and help to people who need it, and we're not criminalizing things like addiction and mental illness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Andy?
Yes, Shannon, thank you. And I see Ann Quilty is next.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah.
Andy.
So I appreciate you speaking to us tonight. So can you speak to the relationship, the interaction between the Attorney General and the state auditor in terms of what the state auditor might find and if, whether or not that gets follow-up from the Attorney General's office?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think the state auditor plays a very important role in auditing state agencies, and the Attorney General's office serves an important role of making sure that there's proper follow-up from that. And I will say this is another important point that I've been discussing throughout the campaign, is that, look, in my career as a civil rights lawyer, I've often been up against the state myself. And I've won battles against the state. I'm not afraid of taking on any powerful interests, and that includes state agencies. So I understand that my constitutional role as Attorney General would be to represent the state and its agencies. But I know from my experience that there are plenty of times that state agencies are not on the right side of matters. And it would be my job as Attorney General to keep those agencies out of trouble and make sure that they are doing what they need to do, that they're complying with our laws, and that issues that are found, for example, by the state auditor are dealt with. If these issues turn into lawsuits that can't be resolved, I can appoint a special attorney general to play the defense role, and if necessary, I can take the role of plaintiffs. I've gone up against the state. I have challenged the state for using a discriminatory and unfair civil service exam, which is used for hiring and promoting firefighters and police officers. Based on my work, I've gotten Black and brown firefighters and police officers hired across the state. My firm is suing the state police right now for violating our newly enacted Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. I have not hesitated to take on the biggest powers, and that includes the state, and I will make sure that taxpayer money is not being used to be on the wrong side of an issue. I'll make sure that the full power and tools available to the Attorney General's office are being used to make sure that state agencies are doing what they need to do to protect the people.
And a very quick follow-up. What are the most active, important cases that Maura Healey is working on now that you would continue to work on when you take office?
So there is a lot of unfinished business there, and I would be the one most qualified and ready to step in her shoes and continue on. First of all, there is litigation against the pharmaceutical industry. That's long-running litigation, which is very important for getting back resources from these corporations that have profited off of spreading opioids across Massachusetts and across the country. So that litigation, there's been a big settlement with one of the players, but there are still many others out there. There is also the work that Maura Healey has started taking on Exxon for lying to us about fossil fuels and their impact on the climate. But that work is far from done, and Exxon is not the only corporation out there that did that. So I would be excited to continue on with that impact litigation, which is exactly the type of work I've been doing. I have led teams of lawyers in my own firm and elsewhere in the country, and I've actually coordinated with attorney generals both in Massachusetts and elsewhere, including in New York and California. So I would be excited to be able to continue on that important work. Maura Healey's office also has sued Uber and Lyft. That is work that I've been doing specifically for the last 10 years. And we're in a chess match. I've been in a chess match with these companies for the last decade. And whatever happens with this ballot initiative that I started to talk about is not going to be the end of the story here this year. And we need an attorney general who understands the situation and what's at stake and knows the next move in that chess match, because the future of work really is at stake here.
Thank you. I want to give other people a chance. Ann?
Thank you so much. Hi, Shannon.
Hiya.
I'm concerned about some of the cases that are coming up before the Supreme Court this summer, specifically women's rights to abortion. if the Supreme Court does the wrong thing with that case, is there anything that the Massachusetts Attorney General can do to address that and other civil rights issues that they may go after at some point in time?
Yes, so unfortunately, it's not looking good for reproductive rights in our country, given what we're all expecting the Supreme Court is about to do. The battleground is about to be redrawn. Basically, here in Massachusetts, we are fortunate to have gotten the Roe Act passed. I was a big advocate for the Roe Act and supported one of the groups that was one of its biggest proponents. Here's what's going to happen is, you know, we're dividing into separate countries here, where you have different states who are going to take every opportunity to roll back women's rights to abortion services. And they're starting to pass laws. They're starting to talk about passing laws to actually make it illegal for women to travel from those states to states like Massachusetts, where there is still freedom of choice. So what's going to be happening, the next stage of these legal battles is going to be, as Attorney General, I would be fighting to stop these other states from trying to reach into our state and prevent us from providing the care and access to women who will be coming here from other states to receive those services.
Thank you.
John Cass?
Isn't that how the Civil War started?
Well, I mean, you know, it's been, it's a different landscape out there, and it's just very frightening to see what is happening in some parts of our country. What I am excited about the opportunity to do is work on the issues and the problems that need to be addressed here in Massachusetts, but a lot of the issues, they cross state lines. So I would be actively working with attorneys general in other states to address the issues that cross state lines, take on the corporate bad actors who are taking advantage of workers and consumers on our planet across the country, and use the power of our state laws in conjunction with those of other attorneys general to take on these corporations. And again, that's what I've been doing for 20 years.
Kathy, I just want to know real quick, I'm sure there is, but do you know when there's an AG debate?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So I've called on all the candidates in this race to have a debate focused on climate change. And I'm looking forward to having that. I hope that that both of my opponents agree to that. Quentin Pelfrey actually has already agreed. Looking forward to doing that because I think we need to go past sound bites and really get into the nitty gritty of our policies and our ideas for how we are going to make a difference in this fight against climate change. And then in addition to that debate, I'm looking forward to having as many debates as my opponents will agree to, and look forward to fleshing out all of our ideas and I'm looking forward to telling Massachusetts voters why I'm most qualified for this job, and as many opportunities as we have to have that discussion. So thank you so much for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. Oh, is that another question?
Yes. You mentioned climate change a number of times. You're running for AG in Massachusetts. Climate change is a U.S. problem. In Massachusetts,
Worldwide problem.
Worldwide problem.
Yes.
I think yours. It's like a cloud. It's very nice, but you get up to it. There's very little you can do. Problems facing Massachusetts are affordable housing, costs for medical care, and if you're a young person, student debt. You should be concentrating on those, not climate change, not in my opinion.
No. Well, if I can just take another second to talk to you about some of my plans are on some of those issues. I know affordable housing is a major issue. Cost of everything is going up for people, and paying rent and staying in your home is getting harder and harder and harder. So one of my plans is to set up a division within the Attorney General's office that would be a tenant advocate position. I think tenants should have the right to counsel in these housing courts. It's the landlords who have counsel and not the tenants. I'd like to oversee mediation programs in those courts to make sure that disputes between landlords and tenants are getting resolved where they can, so that these courts don't just continue to be eviction mills. Student debt is a huge issue. I know on the national level, some of our representatives are trying to get student debt canceled. I would love to see that. But in the meantime, what I can do as Attorney General is I can go after these debt collection companies that are using unfair practices and are making it so difficult for students who are dealing with this extremely burdensome debt load. Make sure that lending rules are enforced and that debt collection practices are not going overboard and that they're staying within our laws. And I would aggressively use our laws to go after those bad actor debt collection agencies that are harassing and abusing students and other borrowers.
Thank you.
Quickly add a request that sometimes I'm frustrated, and I think a lot of other people are frustrated because there's confusion about what the Attorney General can leverage. Okay, how effective are the laws? We had the compressor station here in Weymouth. Basically, bottom line, compressor station went through because our environmental regulations were so weak. And a Republican administration basically did not act the way it could have more proactively. It just said, well, those are the rules. We followed the rules. We followed the process. So they got the station. So it would be educational for the public to understand from the Attorney General's office where certain things are askew, but there's just no effective way to deal with it with the existing regulations and laws.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's why I feel like the role of the Attorney General is multifold. One, there is aggressively enforcing the laws that we are lucky enough to have, but the other is I would be an activist Attorney General working with the legislature to fill in those gaps and strengthen those laws that don't provide the full protections that we need. So I think that's an important part of the role.
Thank you. I have to agree with Andy that as someone who lives in East Braintree and has to deal with the compressor station spewing particulate matter and fumes, this is a very important subject to me personally. So I appreciate your being here, and we had some great questions, and I thank you for your thoughtful answers to them. And we look forward to seeing you at the convention on June 3rd and June 4th. So if those of you, Shannon has put her info in the chat, and you can sign up to volunteer or check out her website, shannonforag.com. So thank you very much. We appreciate your being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for having me, everyone, and have a great evening. And I look forward to seeing you all in June.